This conference will now be recorded.
Member Arsali,
Here.
Member Sloat,
Here.
Member Zide,
Here.
and Vice Chair Bingham.
Be here. You will stand and pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, we want to approve the minutes from the May.
We inadvertently,
The-
there were some minutes that got left off agendas, so I've got those for approval. We're trying to get those caught up.
Kelly, maybe just for the record, do a roll call.
I'm sorry,
Maybe you just do a roll call.
I just
Did
did.
we do a roll call? We did? I missed it. It's been a long morning.
So these were minutes that were inadvertently left off. as
Do we
well, so
approve them separately or one at a time?
You can do them all together or separately, however you choose.
Also, do them all at one time?
I actually, oops, am I on now?
Yes.
I actually have a small comment
Okay.
on the April 17th one, if I might.
Okay, approve minutes of April 17th.
Which was your comment?
I have one comment on the second page where it says, I move to approve the variance request. I'm not sure that, maybe you did take it from exact words, but I think it might be clearer if it said, approve the variance request with conditions that the existing structure and any renovation to the current structure must be within the current footprint.
We can make that change.
Thank you.
Oh,
You can do them all now if you want.
was that
Yeah.
on the April,
The April 17th.
April 17th? I think that's the meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes and with the one amendment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes,
Aye.
aye.
And now we have to select a chair and vice chair.
Yes, every year we must select a new chair and vice chair. They can be the same ones, they can be new ones. It's totally up to the board and how they choose to decide. I do have ballots to pass out. And then just pick one for chairs first.
I didn't hear. I'm having a hard time reading. I've got a pen in this pocketbook someplace. I'm going in the pocket.
You want our name on the bottom?
Yes, please.
Oh, I need your name at the bottom. It's at the bottom here.
So much for secret ballots.
Nothing secret in government.
You say I write small. You say the teachers always used to complain.
There you go.
Oh, no, I've got one.
Oh, that was sitting up here. You're welcome to use it.
Couple of those little pocketbooks that you can never find.
You could hurt yourself in there.
Okay, and the results are Hendon 3 and Martell 1. So Mr. Hendon will be
I
chair.
can't hear you.
Sorry, Mr. Hendon got 3 and Mr. Martell got 1. So Mr. Hendon will be chair once more. Now for vice chair. You can't vote for Hendon again.
I think I must be getting deaf because I still didn't hear what you said.
Same chair. Bruce.
So Mr. Hendon got it again, and then now we're voting for vice chair. Okay.
Do I have to sign it?
I'll put your name at the bottom.
Okay, with a vote of 1 for Sloat, 2 for Bingham, and 1 for Zag. Sorry. So it looks like Ms. Bingham, you are vice chair again. Congratulations.
At this time, any ex parte communication should be either disclosed or identifying the subject of the communication. Has anybody had any? Do I have to read the whole thing?
Can we have Chrissy go first, just to kind of do a reminder?
Yes, good morning. What we thought we'd do this morning, since it's been a while since we've met, and also a while since I've done a little presentation on the board's responsibilities and some of the criteria, I refreshed a presentation I did in 2022 to sort of remind the board of your responsibilities and particularly the criteria for variance. So if I could take a little bit of your time, I'll just run through that so that we're all back on the same page. So as I said, my name is Christy Gatto. I represent the town as the town attorney. We go to the next slide. This is our Board of Adjustments. So you have 3 primary duties. The first is obviously to hear and consider variances. You also hear appeals from decisions of the administrative official, which includes the building official or other town officials. And then you can also authorize alterations to non-conforming or grandfathered use. Most of my time with the town has been dealing with all on variances. So go to the next slide. All of your hearings are quasi-judicial. What that means is there is criteria set forth in the Land Development Code that you review those criteria against an application and determine if that application has satisfied the criteria. That's why it's quasi-judicial. You are using a set of facts to apply to criteria, and then you're sitting as the judge to make the decision whether all the criteria has been satisfied. As a quasi-judicial board, your decision must be impartial. You can ask questions, evidence is presented to you, and then at the end of the hearing, after deliberations, everybody must vote unless you have a conflict. Okay? As chair has just requested, at the beginning of every hearing, we must disclose any ex parte communications. That way, everybody involved in the hearing knows what you know about the subject matter. So if you had conversations with the applicant, if you had conversations with neighbors, if you went and inspected the premises, this is all information that you should provide just so that everybody knows what your background knowledge is of the specific application. That's an ex parte communication. If at some point you felt like, well, I've had conversations and maybe I now I'm gonna prejudge this application, then we need to explore that further to make sure that you can sit as an impartial hearing officer. Okay? So in our quasi-judicial hearings, there's no strict rules of evidence. Everybody has to be sworn in because all testimony still must be under oath. The applicant and staff, myself, have the ability to cross-examine any witnesses. And one thing to note is public participation is not generally considered evidence. However, it can sometimes be evidence because if it's someone who is familiar with the community, sometimes public comments could be considered evidence. It just depends. So whether or not to grant, in this case, say a variance, you have to find that there's competent, substantial evidence to support granting the variance. Or if you're going to deny the variance, then you would find that there's not substantial, competent evidence to support granting the variance. What that means is it needs to be relevant and material to each of the criteria you have to consider. Keep in mind hearsay evidence. So hearsay is something that's been said outside of this hearing that nobody has an ability to cross-examine. You can consider hearsay evidence, but there needs to be something else that corroborates the evidence. For example, if someone said, oh, I was told that this condition exists at this property, that's hearsay. But if you know from your general knowledge of the town that yes, that condition does exist, then you could say you have corroboration that, yeah, I know that condition exists in town. So that's an example of hearsay. At the end of each hearing, you then consider making a motion to approve with or without conditions, or you can do a motion to deny. You also do have the ability to make a motion to continue if for some reason you feel like you need more information that wasn't presented in the hearing. So that's another opportunity that you have as well. Getting into the criteria for variances, what is on the screen right now is sort of the long, wordy version of what you really are looking at to grant a variance. Because what you're doing is allowing a property owner to do something on their property that ideally really nobody else is normally allowed to do. So you're looking at, there's something unique about their real property, there's something unique about the conditions on their property, or other unusual physical conditions that would support that they really need a variance to just enjoy their property like everybody else is able to do. What I've highlighted at the bottom was that to keep in mind that in granting the variance, you may require certain conditions with the grant of variance. You can put a further time limit on the grant of variance. You can limit it to the current property owner. Whatever you think would make the variance specific enough that it only pertains to these certain circumstances. That's also within your purview. So getting into sort of the criteria that you look at, there's 4 criteria that really initially staff has to look at in determining whether or not to send an application forward. Now, what we typically don't do is put staff in the position of saying whether or not you should grant it or deny it. That's really a board decision. What staff does is make sure that the criteria has been fleshed out in the application and can be presented to you. So these are the first 4 criteria that are reviewed for any application. These 4, and then there's 10 more. There's a little bit of an overlap and they're kind of duplicative of each other, but these are things that what you should be thinking about when you're hearing the evidence in each of your hearings. And these 4 involve something's peculiar about the real property, that the property owner, there's some right that they want to enjoy that others are allowed to enjoy, but they can't because of unique circumstances. They do have special conditions, and that you're not giving them a special privilege that nobody else can enjoy. So those are the sort of first 4, and then if we go to the next slide, there's 10. And the 10 are the very specific ones that you make sure that in any variance hearing that the evidence supports each of these 10 criteria. Again, it's a little bit duplicative, but They need to make sure they've met the previous requirements, and this includes an application that provides the justification, and they've done the other things, paid the fee, there's proper notice for this hearing. Also, the application needs to set forth the reasons to justify their application. Then the third criteria, oh, did we skip one? There it is. Again, peculiar to land, structure, or building involved, that they have special circumstances. Criteria 4, that the special circumstances do not result from the action of the applicant, that they're not given a special privilege that nobody else can enjoy in that particular zoning district, that the literal interpretation of the land development code would not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other property owners. And then the very common criteria for every variance is that they do have an undue hardship. And I represent several cities, and really when you talk about variances, but one of the key criteria is they do have hardship. Because of how their property, their parcel is set out, or other physical characteristics of their property, that they really have a hardship. Criteria number 8 deals with the minimum variance. Again, as I mentioned, you have within your purview, the ability to add special conditions if you want to grant a variance. And this is a way to make sure that criteria number 8 is met. It's the minimum variance granted to ensure that they can do what they're seeking to do. So if their request might seem, too large, or you want to limit the time frame for the variance, that's how you can minimize the variance so it's specific to the facts and circumstances of each case. Then criteria number 9 is a general harmony with the land development code. And then criteria 10, it's not what you're granting, it's not injurious to others or a detriment to public welfare. So those are the 10 general criteria that you're looking at for each variance hearing to make sure that the evidence presented to you in the hearing satisfies all of those criteria. If you believe that that hasn't satisfied all of the criteria, then you should be having a discussion about each of those criteria, what you think was met and was not met. And then through those deliberations, come to a decision, which is then in your motion to grant with or without conditions or to deny. What is also mentioned in our land development code is that financial hardship alone is not enough to grant a variance. So, you'll sometimes see an application and we want to do this because this way to do this is cheaper. That alone isn't enough as a hardship. And then obviously you can't really grant any kind of use. You couldn't allow a restaurant to go up in a residential zoning district. That's not allowed. So if you do grant a variance, keep in mind, again, as I mentioned, you can impose conditions, and what I've highlighted on the screen is that technically what it's supposed to be is that within 6 months, they're supposed to pursue getting the building permits for the variance. If they don't, or they run into an issue, they can get a 6 month extension. I think in the past we've put on approval letters that they have 18 months, but I believe that's a carryover from a planning and zoning development review. So really for variances, it's a short time frame that they're supposed to move on it. And again, keep in mind, you can play with that time frame if you want. That's also within your purview in terms of a condition. So, for example, if you were granting a variance for a house that someone wanted to build, you might extend the time frame a little bit longer because they would still have to go through development review, and then getting their building permits is usually a longer process. So in that type of variance, you might say, okay, we'll give you an initial year to get the permits to do this, as an example. So quick overview. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. All right, okay.
Then proceed with the hearing. Will the town clerk please swear the witnesses?
Did we have an ex parte?
The ex parte.
What? Oh,
Ex parte.
I thought I did that.
Communication.
Okay. Where is it? I'm sorry, this is not my bag. I know this is an ex parte hearing.
Oh, right here.
No. At this time, all ex parte communications should be either disclosed or identifying the subject of the communication and identify the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place, or any correspondence be provided to the town clerk and made part of the public record. In addition, each member of the board may identify the existence of any investigation or site visits he or she has conducted, or any expert opinions received and disclosed any conflict of interest. Do you have any?
I just drove by the property, did not stop.
No ex parte communication, no. No.
No.
I just looked on Google Earth.
Well, I actually drove onto the vacant lot across this canal, looked down to see what this structure, how much it would obliterate other people's site. And then I also investigated other canals to see what was on them. Most of them were completely free and clear of any structures except maybe a few chairs here. I did not investigate all of them. I also went into a couple of people's yards and looked over both ways to see.
All right.
Okay.
So in the case for,
We'll proceed with the hearing matter.
were you done? I'm sorry.
Will the town clerk please swear in the witnesses?
So in the case for 26 Harvard Drive South, anyone wishing to speak on this item, could you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? When you are called forward, please, called to speak, please state your name and address clearly for the record and whether or not you have been sworn in.
The mayor or chair, town staff will now make the presentation.
Good morning, Chair, board members, Corey O'Gorman, Town Planner. This is an application for a variance for the property located at 26 Harvard Drive South. The request is for a setback variance of 22 feet 6 inches for a sun trellis addition to the rear of the existing structure at 26 Harvard Drive South. This is a variance that was considered in the past by the Board of Adjustment. It was considered in 2021 and approved and subsequently expired. It was also considered in May of 2023, and the application for a building permit was submitted, construction commenced, and the issue arose during construction regarding conflicts with existing improvements, making it impractical to install the vertical support posts for the trellis. So the request before you is to extend the support posts further into the rear setback to a point that would be approximately 2 feet 6 inches from the rear property line. on the property seawall. It does not change the configuration of the sun trellis itself or provide any other improvements. It is to reflect conditions that were identified during construction to further extend the support posts. The staff report includes a review of the criteria that were presented to you a moment ago by the town attorney. And just to run through those briefly, they are special circumstances and conditions regarding the property, the land structure or building involved, including in this case, the conflict with structures that existed on the site. The special circumstances and conditions don't result in the actions of the applicant. The granting the variance request would not confer on the applicant any special privilege. The literal interpretation would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed. The variance is the minimum variance that would make possible the reasonable use of a land structure or building involved, in this case, the sun trellis. That granting the variance would be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the ordinance, and that the variance would not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. There also, as an attachment to the staff report, there's an engineering layout of the sun trellis indicating generally where the vertical support posts would be located, and included in the backup is the application from the applicant, as well as the applicant's narrative addressing the criteria that, once again, were reviewed with you by the town attorney, and which I touched on just a moment ago. The recommendation of staff is to consider the information provided in the application, the narrative provided by the applicant, and any testimony that you hear this morning, and make a decision regarding the further extension of the vertical post for the sun trellis. And we'd be happy to try to answer any questions. That concludes my presentation.
This is an extension of the one that was given before, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, the prior.
The prior one was set back.
I beg your pardon?
The prior one was about 6-7 feet from the.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. So this is a request to be able to relocate the vertical support posts where the prior variance did allow the vertical support posts to be within the setback. This is a request to extend that a little bit further into the rear setback to accommodate the conflicts that they encountered during construction. Thank you.
Any members of the public like to make comments? Is that next?
You want comments from the applicant?
What?
You want comments from the applicant?
Yeah, well, comments from the applicant, comments from the public. Comments from the applicant first.
Thank you for allowing me to come forward. The only reason we're making these changes is I wanted this built as safely as possible. There's 2 posts coming down. The way the variance was approved the last time, you had the posts coming down almost into my pool on the coping. And there was no way that we can get around that. So I had Mike, the building inspector, and a bunch of others come forward to look at the situation. And everyone made the recommendation, the safest way to build this is to have those 2, we're not extending the length of the structure, we are just extending the length of the 2 posts. And I'll let my builder comment more.
Good morning. What this gentleman said to start off was perfect. There's really not a lot more to add to that presentation. So when we originally got the variance, if you guys turn around and look at that, okay, I wish I could reach it. Right now, that's the current request that's in place. If you look at the end, the 2 posts would be at the end, all right? What had been granted several months back in the variance was a cantilever posting, where instead of the posts would be there, they would be back about 7.5 foot. Okay, and that was what was issued, that was what we were going to build. However, once we started to, we were so happy to get the variance that, when it was originally issued, we were like, it was a home run. But then when we got to actually build it, the deck that it would be built on has serious structural issues that would not be able to withstand the pressure of those posts. That deck would.
I'm on pavers, and the pavers sink, and every 18 months I have to lift it. There's no way I could lift this sun trellis to redo the pavers. It might have sunk. So that I paid the extra money to have another beam put in and to move the structure because I want it done safely. I want it to live there. And for my rest of my life, I want this sun trellis to be existing structure.
So what I was saying was the deck would actually have to be removed and rebuilt. There were fractures in the deck. It just could not take the wind load, so the engineer would not sign off on it unless I cut out about a 3 foot by 3 foot by about 6 foot deep section of the deck and pour a giant, massive footer, twice the size of this, and then would mount that post there. Now, feasible as that one is, okay, the challenge would have been on the opposite side, because on the opposite side, that footer then, would go half on, awesome, half in the deck and half in the pool, making that part impossible. So when Darlene spoke to the people that you mentioned, the line there, the absolute line is the seawall and the canal. And that's built on 3 foot steel pilings. I mean, that goes deep, and that's approved by the Army Corps of Engineers. So if what we did was, so if this was the deck, all right, and this was the seawall, if what we did was instead of having a cantilever, and don't forget, the top of the trellis is 10 foot off of it, so there's no interference down here. If we mounted the post to the base of the seawall and into the wall this way and into the deck, it would be secured. There's nothing that could not handle that wind load. And don't forget, when the louvers are open, there's no uplift, there's no pressure against it. So that was what we were requesting. Now, there was one thing that you said that I do need to comment on. So again, I wish I could reach it. When Darlene said that it's not going to be extended, well, it actually would be. So where it was supposed to end right at the edge of the seawall, even though the post was cantilevered back there, it would actually be coming out about another, whatever that is, about 18 inches or so. But that would be to accommodate for those posts on the edge. So if you look at the original engineering drawings and the current engineering drawings, it's extended about 18 inches. And that's but we're talking about the top, nothing down there. So those beams that hold that trellis up would actually be extended about 18 inches longer to accommodate for where those posts have to sit. So that it would be, without a doubt, the safest, most securest way to do it. There's really not much more I could say. It's been approved by the engineer. The engineer provided all the letters that was necessary, and
Can I just make one more quick comment? I'm in the process right now, because I have 5 little Shih Tzus, of putting in a fence.
Speaking of
I'm so sorry. So I'm in the process of getting a permit right now to put a fence on my seawall where all my neighbors do too. And that's gonna have 5 vertical piling, going down, versus this is just 2. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm getting that approved. I didn't have to go for a variance. And this has been approved once, twice. So thank you for your consideration.
Yes.
Before you guys step away, can you please state your names for the record?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Angel Darlene Johnston, owner of the 26 Harbor Drive South.
Bob McAllister.
Thank you.
Did you guys have any questions for me about, yes?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the proposed posts, they're gonna be sitting on the seawall?
Yes, sir. So, again, the seawall's an L, right? It's the wall and it's the deck. So the plate, here's the way that the post works. The post is a 6 inch by 6 inch post, aluminum. And on the bottom, there is a fabricated plate that has a U-channel inside of it. We drop the post on the U-channel and then mount the U-channel to the post. But the plate that holds the U-channel is on the deck part of the seawall. So the post would be down here connected to this, but then to further secure it, we would put anchors through the post into this part of the seawall. So on both sides, it would be connected, bottom and on the top. Whereas if it was just a standalone, it would have the plate. So this would have the additional reinforcement of the wall itself.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever think of making this is a screen for the pool, I take it, and there's a swimming pool underneath the screening. Did you ever think of moving it back and making the screening smaller so it wasn't so visible all the way up and down?
It's not a screen. You want to explain it?
Yeah.
There is no screen involved.
Well, I call it a screen. Louvers, it's
a shade structure, ma'am.
It's a
Yes.
shade, whatever. And is it metal?
It's all aluminum, yes, ma'am.
And does that not absorb heat and make the heat underneath higher?
Well, I guess everything absorbs heat, but in this particular case, the way that it works, it's actually an interesting phenomenon. Right? So if you have a canvas top or a fixed roof top, even though it's outside, like if you go to an outdoor dining restaurant, it's still humid in there because the heat cannot escape. So the added advantage of the adjustable louver is when the louver opens even a ½ inch, the heat escapes, and that's the phenomenon. A breeze comes in, so it's very comfortable underneath there, just to answer that part. But as it relates to your question, did we want to make it smaller? All right. So the answer is, here's her house. Now, Miss Johnston, I suppose, was a young lady when she had the house built. What she didn't realize, just so the board understands, is here's her lot of land, okay? And from the street to the beginning of the house, she must have maybe a good 50, 75 foot worth of lawn.
Yep.
And she kind of built the house in the middle of her lot. So from the back of the house to the canal is about the same equidistance from the street to the front of the house. But what she didn't realize at the time, and none of us knew until we got involved with this, is from the back of her house to the canal, which is about 26 feet, the setback is 25 foot. So in reality, her backyard is 1 foot. She wouldn't even have enough room to put this thing in there. So when we decided to build a shade structure, because originally she was approved for the deck and her pool. So she has the pool, and the pool goes out a good distance into the backyard. Rather than just putting a screen enclosure around it, all right, what she did was, and because her parents are old, they're in their 90s, they can't be in the sun, she was going to create a shade structure that went from the wall of the house, from the sliding glass doors, out to the edge of the deck. And that was what the plan was. So, and that was what has been approved, except where the 2 posts were supposed to be holding it up would it be cantilevered back about 7 foot from the edge, giving enough room from that post placement out to the edge of the canal so there would be nothing impeding it. And it had been approved. But when we decided to start construction and put those posts in, that's when we discovered that on the one side, the deck couldn't handle it without putting in that massive footer. And then on the other side, that footer would be equidistant between the paver deck and the pool. And that whole area would have to be opened up to put in that footer on this side. That particular footer might, like if I was just building it right out there, it might cost me $1,500 to build. Because of the pool and that particular footer might cost $20,000. I mean, it's crazy. So, yes, ma'am.
I have a question. If they put the footers out to the seawall, does that not make it a quasi structure, permanent structure?
Well, I think it does make it a permanent structure, but it would be an accessory structure to the principal building. And if I'm understanding your question correctly, it is just a shade structure. It's the roof, no walls or sides to enclose it, and the support posts that the request is addressing. Does that answer your question?
Well, almost.
It is a
except,
structure, yes,
I think it's a narrow line when you start making permanent structures out of the seawall. But that does answer my question. I have one more question. When the breeze goes through this louvers, is that going to create noise? Usually when
No, ma'am.
breeze goes through a system, it whistles.
Yes, ma'am. No, but in this particular case, no. I have it you may see it in about 100 restaurants all around here. It has become the new go-to product over the last 7 years. We originally built it in Admiral's Cove and Irish Country Club and Frenchman's Creek and Frenchman Reserve, and then it went like wildfire. Everybody wanted to have it in their backyard. So the louver is called an adjustable louver. You can open it a half an inch, you can open it up 6 inches. At nighttime, let's say you want the stars and the moon, you open it up full so there's nothing in the air. If you come out of the pool and you want the sun, you open it, you got it full. If you just want a little bit of breeze, you open a half an inch. It doesn't whistle or make any of that kind of sound. Now, I've never actually had the guts to stand out there in the middle of a hurricane, okay, to hear what it sounds like then. I imagine it might sound like a subway car, but but then again, I haven't really had a hurricane around here in 20 years, so. And I do not mean to be facetious, I'm just being honest. But it's coming, okay. I'm sorry, yes, ma'am. If I could just add one little detail to that last question that you asked this gentleman. When you talked about the footer on that deck, so the deck and the seawall, in essence, is the footer. There is no additional footers going in, because that deck and that seawall is already built by virtue of the steel pilings that are into the ground already supporting that structure. So we would just be mounting the post to the deck.
Second question. I was not at the hearing when this was confirmed,
Yes, ma'am.
but was it not back another 6 feet from where you're doing it now? The structure, overhead structure?
You mean
It
the
did not come all the
post
way, it did
placement?
not come all the way out in what was confirmed.
Well, again, if you look over here, you see where it says that the length from the house to the end is 25 foot? The original one that was approved ended before the edge of the seawall, which was, like I said, like maybe 23 and a half or something like that. So it is being extended. It's being extended about whatever that exact measurement is, 18 inches or something like that. But that's only up above. So again, I wish I had something to touch. The upper beam, which would be ending before the seawall, is extending to the outside of the seawall to accommodate that post placement.
Can I ask a question to the planner? The whole top, bottom is coming out another 5 feet, is that correct?
No.
Well, that's what
I'm sorry.
The variance is for another 5 feet, correct?
My understanding was the extension was just for the vertical support.
And that is
posts.
what we're doing. It's coming down to the seawall.
We need you on the
Before
mic.
you need
You
on the mic.
make sure all your comments are on the mic. Thank you.
So this is the seawall. It was coming to the seawall, now it's on the seawall. That's the only difference. The two posts are coming down onto the seawall.
It says here.
Yeah.
Request additional setback variance to be located 2 feet 6 inches from the rear property line.
That's the additional,
That's what we're asking.
Oh,
Another 2 feet 6 inches.
yes, sir.
So not 18 inches. that you were saying.
No, I think you're incorrect. I'm sorry. No, we're asking it to go, so 5 feet, the posts are moving forward. It was 7.6, now we're asking for 2.6.
Right.
It's just the post.
But the post is what you need the variance for.
Exactly,
Okay, so it's 5 feet.
to move the post,
Well, I thought it
yes,
was
but not the
7.3.
upper structure.
The upper structure has to go to the post.
No, it was cantilevered. So they had it, the post here, and it was going out cantilevering. And I didn't feel that was safe. So that's when
Maybe I can explain it here. I understand. I'm
Okay.
being an engineer here. What happened was before, the posts, they were not at the end of the turn. So they were 5 feet.
Right,
So
the post was here and it went over.
Yeah, it was like the post here, and this thing was sitting. Now what they want to do is
Move the post to
because
the
the
end. I
posts
got it.
require a base
I got it.
to set it on.
Right.
They want to move the post to the end.
Right.
Okay, and to the end to do it still is not right at the seawall. They need another 2 foot to extend to go right on the seawall.
Well,
So
Thank
the
you,
posts are
Nicholas.
going to be at the end, is that correct?
That's correct.
But it's the area, it's only increased by 18 inches. So in other words, if you're looking at it from the aerial view from the top, you're going to see an 18-inch increase. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right, but the prior variance was based on the post location,
Mm,
not,
Yeah.
No, it was
No, it was
based on
based
the
on
whole
the total.
structure.
yes,
then why is it 5 feet difference?
No, it shouldn't be 5 feet, that's what
No,
they're saying.
moving the post 5 feet out. That's all we're doing. We're not moving the whole structure out 5 feet.
Whole structure is
I think the structure was before into the, like whatever, 17 foot or whatever it was, before the structure was. But the posts were setting back. Now I see that what they're doing is the structure extending it another 18-inch. Also the post is, but the variance they got was not for the post, it was for the structure before. Because the structure sets out, so that was not really a
That's
post.
not the way it's written here, but I totally understand what you're saying.
Okay.
That's not what states here, because that's all my only
Okay,
point.
that needs some
I have
clarification.
a problem with creating a permanent structure which increase it in a setback for future references of things where people want to build something and not pay any attention to our setbacks, which is what keeps our neighborhoods open and friendly.
I have a question for staff. And Christie, probably for you. So the the variance that was approved in, what was it,
Yeah, like I
23,
said, yeah.
Yes, sir.
May 23. So that's been more than that variance. They started the project, right?
Yes.
So that variance is still in effect.
Yes, sir.
Because they started the project. Okay. Okay, so do we have the ability on this one to go back and say, revisit the original 10 points if it was to determine whether it qualifies now, or do we take that as a given?
Each and every variance has to stand on its own merits. So what was granted in the past does not guarantee that it should be granted in the future. Just as if a neighbor of this property came in with the same request. Doesn't mean granting this one will guarantee that everybody else can have it because you're looking at the particular circumstances of each case. So past precedence is usually not guaranteed future variance.
You don't talk loud enough for me to hear.
I'm sorry, you want me to repeat that? So, each variance has to stand on its own merit, and its own evidence, and, its particular circumstances. So just because a variance is granted in the past does not guarantee that same variance will be granted in the future, because each variance you're looking at different aspects. Each of the variance requests for this property, there has been a change of each circumstances along the way. The first one was granted, the second one, which was also granted, had to have a little bit of variance because of some particulars, I believe, with the balcony. Now this variance, they've changed things again because of the particulars with how the structure is to be constructed. So each time those variants have changed their circumstances, so each variance has to stand on its own merit, and that allows for you to look at each of the criteria and apply what's been presented to each of the criteria.
Just to clarify,
Yes, sir.
how far from the seawall will the posts be?
They'll be on the seawall.
They'll be
Right on the?
Yes, yes, sir.
You talked about the L shape,
Yes.
so this is the seawall is like this.
So the seawall.
This is an example right here, okay?
Yes.
So the seawall is here,
Yes, sir.
and let's,
And this is the water, this is the canal.
right, and then
Okay.
there's, the seawall also has a lower point down here.
It has a lower point down here on the water side. This
Right.
is where the deck is. So the seawall comes down and then there's like a 3-foot deck.
And that's where the post is gonna be.
Yes, sir. Connected to that deck and to the outside of the wall. That's what we're requesting.
Is the seawall public property?
No.
Chair Bingham, the seawalls is considered an accessory to your primary principal use, being the home. So has to be built on the property line. There's some ability to build out from that through the Army Corps of Engineers, which we just learned yesterday. But it is typically on the property line, so it is not public property. It is that property owner's
But
property.
if it's built out from the seawall, is that on public property?
Well, you start to get into the whole riparian rights thing. So yes, it could be extended out from the actual property line, but it's not considered public property.
If something happens to it, who repairs it?
The
Who's
property
responsible?
owner, yes.
And
It's their accessory structure. So if it comes in disrepair, we would send out code enforcement to make sure that the property owner repairs the seawall.
I don't mean to go back in time, but could someone explain to me, first of all, okay, someone explain to me what was the reason, the hardship that generated, the hardship being presented for why this structure was needed?
Why the structure was needed is because the backyard had no shade. It was just a simple request that the homeowner wanted to use her backyard.
So I have gone through I had an umbrella with a table there. It is flipped over with the winds 3 times. I've had broken glass all inside my pool. I've had to drain the pool 3 times and have glass removed because the wind, the way it comes down, and that's exactly how it all started. I live in a wind tunnel in the back of my backyard. And also, my dad, when he was alive, and my mom, who is still alive, they cannot go in my backyard because they both have skin cancer. My dad passed in 23, and that was one of the delays of all of this. And the last time I got my variance was during the time when my dad just passed, and I had to come from the funeral. So I just want to make that clear. I live in a backyard where you cannot sit there at all in the summertime, in the spring, in the fall.
You mentioned the glass in the pool. Where'd that glass come from?
From the table. It was the tabletop and it totally blown over. And I had pictures in the originals that I sent you. So you could see, I have a 300-pound base for my umbrella and it flipped everything over. That's the truth.
In the original request, there was a full engineered explanation for how the ocean ridge itself, where the wind comes in off the ocean.
It's discussed in this package.
It is mentioned in there.
It just comes
It's
straight
an
down.
anomaly. It's an anomaly that is specific to her particular locale. And, it happens throughout the town, we didn't know.
No, anytime you have a canal going east and west, the wind will follow the canal.
Gotcha, Ken.
Madam Chair, what may be helpful is, Corey O'Gorman, the town planner, has just handed me Exhibit B, which was the justification for the most recent variance that is still in existence. I don't know that if this was included in your backup, but I just want to make sure the applicant is aware. This was what was previously presented. It might be helpful to look at some of these exhibits to this, because I think it can show that in the past, what the board may have looked at for their consideration. Mr. Slope, if I can pass this down to you. To take a look at it. With each variance, what's important is looking at each variance on its own merit, because what perhaps one board with different board members on it would consider a hardship does not necessarily mean it would be a hardship for some, and vice versa. Some may say there wasn't a hardship, and others may find that there is a hardship based on the evidence and testimony presented. So reasonable minds can vary. If you can make an argument that there's substantive, competent evidence that supports the criteria, then you could proceed with granting it without conditions. If you don't believe there's, in your opinion, that same evidence to support granting, then you would discuss why you think it should be denied. So,
If I might, so.
If there could have been a second choice that would not have encroached upon the setback as much, would that be a criteria?
well, I think that's something that you want to explore, because one of the criteria that we talked about previously was, is this the minimum variance that would provide what the property owner is seeking, but not give them a special privilege that others would not be entitled to? So if you think perhaps what's been proposed is too big, then you could explore through questions of the applicant, have you considered a smaller trellis or some other configuration?
Yeah, Betty, just for the record, I do definitely recall the last variance, which was, at that point, it was to extend the balcony. You had to go out another 2 feet, right? And so, I mean, I remember that. I remember what you were going through. I remember what I said. I made the motion to approve it. It did not have anything to do with the trellis. And so at that point, I didn't give any thought.
Can I just say something to that? The balcony cannot be supported without the trellis. The trellis is holding up the balcony. So for the last 2 years, I've been unable to use my balcony.
I can't hear.
I need to get this approved somehow. If not, I'm in a really bad situation.
Your contractor is shaking his head in disagreement.
I want to talk into the mic, so.
Yes, sir. I'm not going to disagree with Ms. Johnson, but the balcony support is not connected to the shade structure. The joists that we're putting into the wall of the house is what's supporting the balcony. But the trellis will then be attached to the balcony on the inside, where it's like a horseshoe.
Okay, so to finish my point is that when we reviewed it the last time, we were just reviewing the balcony. And So we didn't even entertain the trellis. From my own personal view, I would have thought, I would have asked if there was a way to significantly reduce the length of the trellis. Okay, no,
Yes, sir.
and whether that was possible, if you made it wider, could you then, outside of the pool area, other options to explore. So I'm really like,
This is-
not sure
can
which,
I-
let me finish, please.
Okay.
Not sure which way to go here, but part of me is saying that where I'm coming out is this thing's been going on for a long time. There's been a lot of hardship. And so my own thought is just personally at this point, it's like, if I had been there in the beginning, I probably wouldn't approve it. But given what you've been through and the whole process, I am at this point inclined to approve. I just wanted them to know where I stand.
May I just put, because you're correct. So, but it's in the sequence. If you notice today, the two posts are at the end.
Mhm.
The original variance, so the second variance, yes, was the balcony. The original variance was for the post placement.
Right.
Originally, where we wanted the post placement was at the end, like it is now, but before the seawall,
Right.
at the edge of the.
Planters.
Right.
I
No,
have these
I
big
understand.
planters.
I got all that. We're okay.
And then as a result of those variance meetings, because at that time, those two posts that were still up on it were an issue.
Right.
Possibly, I think at the time they had said Army Corps of Engineers, and if there was ever a war, they need to get in the backyard.
Mr. Guy had a problem with it.
And so that was why the posts were then cantilevered back to 7 foot.
I'm sorry, I missed it right before that because you said Mr. Guy didn't approve it. What was the original plan that he didn't approve? I'm just curious.
Putting the two posts in the planters where I have the beams still sitting there. But when I had Mike and Mr. Pugh come out and look at the situation for their guidance, they were the ones that said, the planter is good, but this is the safest way to do it.
Okay.
That's what they told me.
All right, so I'll shut up at this point. I just want to reiterate that when it first came in, I probably would have been inclined to find some structure that did not extend as far. However, given the history and everything, the fact that it was originally approved, and this is just, you're saying that it's not, the top is going to the same length it would have been, and you're just moving the posts out, I'm like this point, as I said, inclined to approve.
Thank you.
My question is, was there not another place that you could have put the trellis? There seems to be a trellis on the side here. Could you not have put this on the side of the pool to give
That's-
I
shade?
don't
That's
have
the
a patio
balcony.
there, I have
No,
trees.
this is the balcony.
No, this is the balcony's off to the side, right?
What's
No, it's
this?
in the center.
This is the balcony.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's the balcony.
And this
Yeah.
right here, so if I can, this right here is just a little walkway that I wanted covered. This is all trees and,
Well, the trees don't give you shade.
Can we get back, make sure that all conversation is
I'm
on the
sorry, I'm
mic so
trying
we
to-
can protect the record? And if someone could describe just what the conversation is based on, are we looking at an exhibit
Yeah, we're looking at the exhibit that was included,
from the prior application?
no, from this application,
Oh, from this
and they
application.
corrected me, I was mistaken. So they're actually requesting, there's two trellises. And I had mistakenly thought that the one trellis was the balcony, and they pointed out that the balcony is actually in the middle of the larger trellis. So I was corrected. Thank
And the
you.
second trellis is just a coverage. And it, that one we didn't need a variance for because that is in the specs.
Okay. It's comments from the public.
We're just trying to build this as safe
Does
as
anyone else
possible.
have?
You want to ask for comments from the public?
Yes, if you want. Can we have comments from the public, please?
Thank you. Thank you.
Terry Brown, Harbor Drive South. First of all, I just wanted to thank Christie for doing that great PowerPoint publication. You should print it and sign it and give it to each board member as they come through and give them another training session. I spent 10 years on this board, so I know some of the rules pretty clear. I haven't got them all committed to memory. But in the historic, it was mentioned briefly in the historic context. There were 4 lots vacant in this neighborhood. Miss Johnson bought one of the lots on the water. By the way, I'm on the dry side of the street. I can't see this device. I can't see the back of the house, so it's not a personal thing. I have no personal interest one way or the other, but I wanted to point out that she purchased the lot, worked very closely with the architect and the builder, and placed the structure where it is now. It's not a grandfathered structure. It doesn't in any way create a hardship with the use of the property as it was built. So I have never seen with this particular structure, auxiliary structure, a hardship as it relates to the property. Not that she desires it, regardless of the fact that the applicant desires this device or whatever it is. She wants it, and she's worked very hard and spent a lot of money trying to get it. And she's run into all these problems from one agency or another. But that's not the hardship. The hardship isn't that her father was sick. The hardship isn't the fact that she wants it. The hardship, it has to be based on the criteria. And as you reviewed this morning with Christie, I'm not saying you should approve it or not approve it, but you have to appreciate the historic context of the property itself. The fact that she doesn't have enough room in the back is not a hardship. It was the way it was built, and she built it. Thank you.
Any other comments?
You very much, Terry. Every time you come.
I think-
Mind your own business. I've already spoken.
Does the board have any further questions of the staff or the applicant?
Are there any questions? I have yet to see the hardship. This is what I've been struggling with.
I have a question for the applicant.
Yes.
If this is approved today, the permit is there, everything is there, so that's going to be completed, is that correct?
Correct.
So it doesn't need any more approval
No.
by go back to the engineering trying to decide if the post goes on the seawall is going to affect anything.
No.
So that is already taken care of. So an approval today, that's mean this thing is over.
This thing is over and we're gonna build it as quickly as possible.
Did you guys apply for the permit?
Oh, we have a permit right now.
A permit based on assuming you obtained the variance?
They had applied for a permit for their previous variance, and then they did a revision to the building permit, and that was denied based on the fact that we couldn't approve it and needed to go back for another variance. So they had a revision submitted, it just cannot get approved until this is done.
So once the revision, if it's approved, then the town has no issue with issuing the permit. So the only thing permits right now is holding is just the setback has to be extended.
Correct.
My problem is the precedence that we're granting, that we might as well not have codes if we allow people to go this far outside of the code limits.
Well, it's been already done, it's been already approved,
It's
so
not
what
a
we are
hard- it's
asking
not a
is just an
hardship.
extension of what
Yeah,
has
they
been.
could have put that
Yeah.
screen here.
So-
I've never seen a swimming pool that had a roof over the top of it. That's beside the point.
Yeah,
You-
well, that is.
And
And I would also see
I
that,
have a problem with
Can I-
the
Betty,
extent of the
Can I
setback. of
say
it.
something? Betty, I don't think you understand the layout of my pool. The pool is vertical. This is only gonna be covering not even 2 to 3 feet of my pool. This has nothing to do with my pool. This
Question
is
if I
just
might.
my patio where I have pavers that I want to be able to sit down and be able to have dinner out there.
I have a question. If, I'm not saying this is what you should do, but if, in this situation, if they wanted to enclose, put a screen up in the area covering the same area, would that require a variance under the town's rules?
I'm
screen
looking to the
enclosure.
town clerk because.
No, I remember
Hold on,
clearly
hold
from
on,
the
Rich,
original,
please,
I'm so sorry.
please stop. We've got a question on the table. We want to ask the clerk if they were to put a screen up, would this require a variance?
If that screen is gonna require any type of post to hold that up, then yes.
Other than, so even if it was just the small little, I mean, all screen enclosures have a post.
Right.
So if any screen enclosure is within that 25-foot variance on someone's home,
Yeah, because anything you do, you're gonna have to put a building permit in, if you're gonna prove that you're not within your setbacks. You would need a variance.
so if I go around the town, I would imagine that there are a number of properties that have screen enclosures within that 20-foot.
And you're probably gonna find that those that didn't get away with, or got away with not getting a building permit.
Or some may have,
And some may have.
all right. So this really is, in many respects, excuse me, this similar to a screen enclosure. Doesn't have anything on any of the sides, and the top may be somewhat different.
May I just
And
say
so,
something?
actually looking at it from that perspective, almost says it's no different than a screen enclosure, which are, I'm sure, all over. But I may be wrong. Maybe there are no screen enclosures that go within that 25-foot
It
zone.
is
Can
the
I just say
extent
one thing
of
on that note?
variance.
Hmm?
The extent of, and if they'd asked for just a setback of 8 feet from the seawall, at least you're not giving a variance to come all the way out. If everybody along the intercoastal built all the way out to the seawall.
And that is what has been granted.
That's exactly
That is what has been granted. That's the reason it got cantilevered back, for that exact reason, ma'am. When we met the last time, that was what the whole issue was the posts that were gonna be out there needed to come back, which has been approved, which is what we wanted to build, and that's when we discovered that the deck had issues.
And that,
It wasn't
at
gonna be
that
safe
time, I
to
would
do
have
it that
suggested
way,
that
Betty.
maybe you change the location of your enclosure for shade.
It's
But
not
you've
an
got this whole place
enclosure,
here.
first off. And in the first variance, you said I could not enclose it. That is part of the variance that I got. And I'm not gonna enclose it. I'm going to put it up, and I might put a little TV in one area so I can sit outside and watch TV. That's it.
From the town clerk, if they put a TV on the structure, would that require a permit?
We already have an
Hold on,
electrical
I'm
permit.
asking the town clerk.
If you're wiring it out there, yes, it would.
And we have an electrical permit as well. We've already applied for that. That has been approved. I paid another $2,500 for that.
I believe, here, let me say this, I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Christie?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, the variance is, we can subject it to be the variance is given for what they're asking for, just the post to be extended out and not including any closures, or anything else in the future in that setback. So the only thing they get, if it's approved, is only the 2 posts to be at the seawall, still 2.5 foot away from the property line.
You're asking for the posts to be outside of the seawall. What about putting them inside of the seawall?
That's where we started 3 years ago.
No, it is inside. It's gonna be again, so I have a planter. This is the seawall on the bottom, and I have a 3-foot planter that comes along. We were originally going to put the posts inside the planter. Now, the safest way to do it, I've been told by engineers, is to put it on the ground and have it attached to the planter that is already sitting on the seawall. That's another thing. The planter is on the seawall.
So perhaps to make the record clear, for the contractor, are the posts that this variance are for, are the posts going to be on the exterior of the seawall or on the interior of the seawall?
Exterior.
Okay. So these posts, if you were to go by this house in a boat, the posts will be on the exterior of the seawall.
And my question was, why couldn't it be on the interior?
Because it's not on pilings then. This is the whole problem. We have muck underneath my home and it sinks. I can show you the bills every 18 months. I need to have my pavers lifted, have it repacked down with sand and have them re-put, sealed, so I could enjoy without tripping and falling over pavers that are like this.
But you're saying you're attaching it to the seawall.
We're attaching it, we're mounting it. Yes, the same way we're gonna mount the fence to the seawall with the post. It's the same thing, but I don't need a variance for the fence.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the fences don't require a setback, they're permitted by the code on the property line, as opposed to.
Can you speak up?
I'm sorry, fences don't require a setback from the property line, they're permitted on the property line.
That's right.
So,
Certain types of fences,
I beg your pardon?
certain types of fences.
Well, the fences and walls are permitted along the property lines to a certain height, depending on their location in the yard. Yes, ma'am.
And I'm gonna have 5 posts for the fence, and I'm asking for 2 posts for the for the structure.
Are there any other comments?
If I may.
Manny, could you come up and put your name on the record in?
Manny Palacios, zoning officer for the town of Ocean Ridge. Kelly just mentioned to me about the question on the structural integrity of the seawall by putting these columns on there. Probably what the building official will request is probably a letter from the engineer indicating that the integrity of the seawall is not compromised by this. So it would probably, if a letter is forthcoming with the permit would be approved.
Are there any further questions for the applicant or staff? If not, perhaps now would be the time for the board to engage in its own deliberations.
Do you have anything further to say?
No.
I will in a minute.
Do you have anything further to say?
No, I do have some problems with it, but I'm thinking it through.
Yeah,
Okay, but I don't have anything to say.
well, my problem is the precedents we're setting.
Betty, can I get you to speak in the microphone?
Thank you.
Can I get you to
My
speak?
problem is the precedents we're setting. Because we have ordinances for good reasons. And that's my problem. I feel that different people, and I don't even know who they are, have come up and spoken to me. And I think there is some resistance to this, moving, allowing the building to go that far.
The way I'm looking at it is, all the neighbors there, they've been notified of this hearing today. All the neighbors been notified, and I don't believe that they had any issue with this or that they have seen this being a problem as far as, the structure, the location. And based on what I just heard about, as far as the seawall is not going to be impacted by this, and the engineer is going to write a letter saying that the post is okay to be put in there, I don't have any problem with approving it, subject to just being what it is. No additional structure in that setbacks in the future. So in other words, this is going to be only for the two posts to come out and set on the seawall, which my understanding is, even though they are on the exterior side of the seawall, but still is about 2.5 foot from the property line, because the way the seawalls are on the back end of them, they have a support in the back. So the seawall itself right now, it is set inside the property, 2.5 foot.
I would have preferred to see them move this whole thing back a few feet rather than forward a few feet is my problem.
Okay. Well, I see they're saying the reason for it, but obviously they have to put a base for it. But,
You don't? What are you gonna do if someone tries to close it in?
well, that's why we are here, to make sure this extension is given. And if they do need to close it in, they have to come back and get another variance for that.
I'm not
closing.
talking,
We can prove it based on that. I believe that's, once we do this, approving the setback variance for the post only, then it doesn't apply anything else. Anything else has to come back to be approved. Any closure of this or anything else. This is what I'm looking at it.
I still feel that it's giving a lot of leeway.
They're engaging in deliberation, so at this point, we're not taking any further
Yeah.
comment.
So,
Chair Bingham, I think one of the issues that you bring up is a precedence. And as I mentioned before, the granting of this does not necessarily mean that every property owner with similar circumstances would be allowed to do the same thing. But at the same time, if you're familiar with this area and recognize that there's other properties in this area that have smaller backyards where their pool is close to the rear of their home and close to their seawall, with similar circumstances, would they be able to claim a similar hardship and seek the same variance? And that is always something you have to ask yourself. And would you be, allowing folks to then engage in something that really is not, in harmony with the land development code, which is to ensure that the rear setback, especially along the water, is primarily clear of encumbrances and obstacles for not only the neighbors, but for others. So those are all things, and I think you guys are all thinking about the right things. I think one of the things that obviously is a struggle is prior board members granting the initial variance. Now the initial variance was for the two posts that would be in closer, right? There was no variance for the length of the trellis. That wasn't the issue. It was that there would be two posts within the setback. The second variance then just dealt with that balcony, which needed to be extended to support that trellis. That was then granted. So now we're here looking at it from the standpoint of now you're going to have two posts connected to the outside of the seawall, and the trellis is now an additional 1.5 feet or 18 inches out to those posts. So, a lot of things to think about. What I would direct your attention back to the criteria. Is there a hardship? Have they established that? Is this granting a special privilege that others are not able to readily engage in, who don't have a hardship? those type of the criteria should be going through your mind to make sure they're ticking off all of those 10 boxes.
Well, do we also consider what created the hardship? In other words, the house being set back as far as it was without leaving a bigger backyard is what has created this whole problem.
Right, and then, you could look at it two different ways. You could look at it that she may have a smaller house, it is set back, bigger houses next to her are also likewise set back that far and create smaller backyards. Obviously one of the criteria is we can't consider it a hardship if it's been created by the applicant. So there has to be another hardship besides where the house is positioned, because as we've heard testimony and evidence that the applicant built the home. So what other hardship is there? And that's the struggle.
That's my question.
I'm really concerned about the visibility of this
Yeah.
and the precedent it's setting. I would definitely approve the posts being inside the seawall, but I am having some problems with it being outside.
Can I-
Shall I call a vote? Is it everybody said what they have to say, or people?
No, I am.
Okay.
I realize that this has been going on for probably way too long. Off the record, I would suggest you fire your engineer because they've made numerous wrong decisions. Should have done a better job. Having said that, my question, I would like, sorry to do this, but I would like to propose that we continue this. And the reason I would propose to continue it goes back to the point I raised, is if there are I think we need to look to the town if they can find a way to determine this. If there are screen enclosures that are within the 25-foot setback, personally, I would treat this no differently than a screen enclosure. Whether it's inside the seawall, outside the seawall is pretty much, irrelevant to me. So that would help me make a decision as to whether or not this should be approved or not. So sorry to push it down the road, but that's what I would propose.
Is there a second for that motion?
May I make a suggestion?
There's a motion on the floor. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Is there a second for the motion?
To
Continue.
I second.
To continue it?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is that unanimous? All are in favor?
Say aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Okay, then the hearing will be continued. The next available hearing date would be,
Want my fingers too?
I looked into the
November 20th.
November 20th. While we're here, we could perhaps make sure that at least the 4 present board members will be here for that hearing.
I'm checking right now.
Okay.
I will be here.
I won't be
Okay.
here.
Okay. So,
I won't be here, unfortunately, but.
okay, so we'll continue this to November 20th. Okay. Okay.
May I ask a question? It doesn't have to be on record, it's just a
Can I
question.
make a suggestion? Our meeting's not over.
Hold on.
Our meeting's not over.
Is your question pertaining to the continuance?
Yeah, it's specific to what Arthur said.
Well, they've continued it to the November hearing, so,
I'd like to invite everybody over for a site visit.
okay. Let us go ahead and finish the meeting and then we'll talk about questions.
All right, I just want to know how I find out about what the rules are concerning the screen enclosure.
Okay, we can talk about that after the hearing, after the meeting's over.
I'd like to make a site visit. I would like to get your phone
I would
number.
like to invite
contact you guys
Okay.
and set up a time.
Let me set some parameters here. You are absolutely free to go meet with the applicant and inspect the site. That is absolutely your right to do it. Please keep in mind that when this comes back for hearing, we will need a full disclosure of that meeting and what you discussed and what you saw, so that everybody has an understanding of the background information that you gained from that site visit. It is also within your decision-making ability to say, I don't want to engage in that. So you can do whatever you think you need as a board member. Just keep in mind, if you do engage in ex parte, we need to make sure that it's said before the hearing. I do also have to remind you that this board is subject to the Sunshine Law. So that means if you do want to meet with the applicant, you have to do it without any other board members present. And you cannot have any conversations outside the hearing about this application amongst yourself, because that's what the Sunshine prohibits, is a conversation between 2 or more board members about an issue that will come before you for a decision. So if you want to meet with the applicant, you're free to do so. Do it one-on-one without another board member is my recommendation. Okay? Any other questions?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. Is the meeting adjourned?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, it is adjourned.
I've been around long enough to see art